Say welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the People's Economic Forum, bringing economic democracy to Philadelphia. Now, we call this part two because we did a part one, what is it, about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and that was focused on essentially affordable housing and how that relates to the Philadelphia Public Bank that we know will happen eventually. And so that was a wonderful 90-minute discussion that evening. And now part two is focusing on powering the cooperative economy. So welcome again. Feel free to put your name and association in the chat box as a way of introduction. The other thing is we're not going to take your voices, but we want your questions in the chat box. We have somebody monitoring the chat box. We will leave most of the questions until the sort of final third of this presentation and evening when we'll be doing sort of a round discussion with our speakers. But we may take a few just sort of clarifying questions as each of the speakers talks to us. So please do put your questions in the chat box as we move along. I am Vanessa Lowe. I am your host this evening. I am a member of the coalition. I'm also host of Vanessa's Money Hour on Germantown Community Radio, and I co-chair the Economic Dignity Team for Power, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. We're going to jump right in with Nicole Levy, who is a member of the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition, and she's going to ground us a little bit in why particularly we chose cooperatives as one of the key issues that we wanted to relate to the potential Philadelphia Public Bank. Go ahead, Nicole.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Vanessa. It's so exciting to see all the names, people joining this discussion. So we here with the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition are so excited to be sponsoring tonight's discussion in partnership with PACA, the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. As I think a lot of us know, our city officials, it seems like they've given up. They lack vision. They act passively as if the economy is something that happens to us. Banks here in Philadelphia make home loans disproportionately available to white residents and not Black residents. That's just the way it is. Small business loans are given to businesses in our wealthiest neighborhoods with very little to no credit going into our less affluent neighborhoods. You need money to get money. That's just the way credit works. And financing for cooperative businesses, well, I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. We've come to accept the unacceptable as some kind of truth beyond our control. Quite literally, we have given our money away, right? Collectively, as a city of residents and businesses, we have $67 billion sitting in the bank. And we've handed virtually all of that over to large corporate banks that are not locally headquartered here in Philadelphia and are not reinvesting our money in opportunities that our residents and our local economy need. It's like we've given up, leaving us in the position to beg for our own money back. But we know this is not the way it should work, right? Because we know that we are the economy, me, you, all of us here. We know that when we have healthy infrastructure of local banks and credit unions, of local cooperatives and minority-owned businesses, we know that money circulates longer, growing opportunities and wealth for all of us. When we are more actively in control of our money and where it's invested, we direct it towards enterprises that benefit our collective economic well-being and not just shareholder profit margins. So this forum tonight is a chance to highlight some of the many leaders in this movement to democratize our economy. Specifically, we seek to highlight those efforts that are most in need of the kind of financial support that could be provided by a public bank and the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. So our first People's Economic Forum, as Vanessa mentioned, was held last November. It focused on the housing crisis, raising up community land trust as the kind of community-powered solution in need of support. Tonight, we are raising up the cooperative movement, and I am really, really excited about our speakers. I have to say, I went into a very deep rabbit hole looking through Clark Arrington's history, codifying sort of organizational structures and financing structures to create and grow so many cooperatives across the country. Weaver's Way here locally is such a great example of how cooperatives can anchor and stimulate local economies. John Rosser is going to show us how cooperatives aren't just peripheral business models, but rather entities capable of holding and generating economic well-being and opportunities across communities. Jamila Medley, is visionary, one of the board nominees for the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. She is exactly the person we want connecting and directing development of a community-powered economy here in Philadelphia. Finally, Alex Stewart and PACA, they've been such great collaborators both on this event tonight and more broadly. So as we jump into this discussion in just 1 minute, I was asked to give a brief update on public banking movement here in Philadelphia. So I just want to remind us all or say that, our very discrete aim right now is very focused on the upcoming primary elections in May and making sure that public banking and implementing the Public Financial Authority are top priorities for voters and candidates. I'll put in a plug that we are also continuing with our Financing Philadelphia's Future series. You can view past episodes on our website or on YouTube. And we have invited all of the mayoral candidates to talk with us and share their visions for Philadelphia's future. But on February 28th, we'll be sitting down with Helen Gim about public banking and her vision for the economic future of the city. So please tune in for that, February 28th, ask questions and continue to lobby candidates about public banking. Finally, I just want to remind us that this moment we're in right now sits within a much longer history and timeline of a public banking movement here in Philadelphia. Just last year in 2022, we pushed through some legislative success when the City Council passed a bill 15-1 to create the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority, which the sitting mayor has failed to implement. Implementing this authority must be a day one priority for the next mayor. We need a mayor who is economically savvy, intentional about building a community-powered economy in Philadelphia, and who understands how the PPFA can vision, coordinate, and accelerate the growth of our local economy. So with that, we are excited again to hear from all of our speakers tonight and talk about how cooperatives can really help power our local economy.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, let's jump right in. So Jamila Medley is an organizational development consultant who served as executive director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance, known as PACA. In that role, she partnered with co-ops, elected officials, movement organizers, and funders to position cooperatively owned enterprises as a solution to economic and racial injustice in the Philadelphia region. Jamila will ground us in understanding cooperative economics. Welcome, Jamila.
All right, I am unmuted. Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you all. As I move into this space, I first want to give thanks to my ancestors whose struggles, determination, their love and joy allow all of us, right, our ancestors, we wouldn't be here without them. So I'm grateful to them. I also express gratitude for the invitation to be in conversation with y'all from the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition and PACA. And I'm really excited about it because I literally, I was asked to talk about Black people in co-ops and cooperative economic practices. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So, and to learn about and having opportunities to talk about it, continue to strengthen my own learning and celebration of the greatness of Black folks. And honestly, I was a little stuck about what to share with you all as it relates to Black people in the US. When we think about cooperative economic practices in the co-op movement, because it's actually all covered, right? In all respect and honor due to Dr. Jessica Gordon Nembhard for her ambitious and loving scholarship, which allowed her to write the book, Collective Courage, A History of African-American Economic Thought and Practice. I spoke to her today. I told her I was going to be here, lifting up this story and all of her work. And I just truly encourage each of you, if you haven't, to read the book, because I'm hardly doing justice to this history and experience. However, what I can share and provide are stories and experiences, both historical and contemporarily, that have compelled me to move forward in support of cooperative development, solidarity, economy building towards Black liberation and freedom from oppression for all people. I currently, amongst some of the projects that I work with, organized to move money to Black-led food and land-based cooperatives through the Collective Courage Fund. And I also support technical assistance providers working with Black-led food co-ops. So in these things that I'm going to share, I'm going to stay in that lane. And I'm also inspired by my elders, right? I remember having a conversation with Baba Clark Arrington, who we will hear from later. And a big takeaway I had from that conversation was to always remember that Black people throughout the diaspora, we remain connected to values and principles that are foundational to who we are because we had them before we arrived on these distant shores. And that's to say that it wasn't enslavement that made us who we are, right? We already had many of these cooperative economic practices in our livelihoods, in our communities, in our families, in our friendships, because of where we came from, the places where we came from in Africa. And many Black folks, exemplify that. We turn to the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of that are often reflected on and celebrated during Kwanzaa as a guide toward collectivity. The culture, Black people, the culture, we hold this phrase Ubuntu, which comes from South Africa, from the Zulu people, which basically means I am because we are. So because we understand that we need each other, like this is all somewhat like cultural DNA that is passed along generation to generation. It's just in there. And so it shouldn't come as any surprise to Black people especially, but to others as well, that Black communities have utilized cooperative economic practices, including the co-op business model, for centuries in the United States to survive and thrive. We can think of over 2 centuries ago, free Black Philadelphians organized for their collective benefit through mutual aid. That's through, we can think about the Free African Society, which was founded by Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. You'll probably seen the placard downtown. In 1787, they organized the Free African Society and invited their members to contribute money monthly. And the funds were distributed throughout the Black community to support widows and orphans, indigent and infirmed folks, as well as to provide education for Black children. These acts of self-actualization are connected to those roots, those core principles and values of movement that have, transcended continents and get passed on from generations and inspire Black co-op movement work today. So today, I think I think of myself as a Black woman and think about the legacy of Black women who came before me. And I know that many other Black women I'm in relationship with in the co-op movement do as well. We draw strength and an encouragement from our ancestors who organized and led self-preservation efforts, such as like the Combahee River Colony, where Black women established this as a maroon collective in 1863 on the Gullah Geechee Islands in South Carolina, where hundreds of Black women, after men left the area to join the Civil War effort, occupied abandoned farmland. They lived in community together and shared together and grew food during the war and for several years after. And as I think about that thread, I can't help but also imagine that the Combahee legacy and how a century later, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Activist, orator, and singer extraordinaire Fannie Lou Hamer started the Freedom Farms Cooperative. Dr. Monica White, author of Freedom Farmers, Agricultural Resistance and the Black Freedom Movement, she explained that the Freedom Farms Cooperative, it was formed in 1967 as an anti-poverty strategy created to meet the needs of impoverished residents of Ruralville, Mississippi. It was a community-based rural economic development project, right? It represented an opportunity for folks who had been displaced, people who were unemployed, land and farm workers, folks who were dispossessed of access to land and displaced by mechanization. It allowed them to stay at home in the South, to live off the land and to create a healthy community based upon building an alternative food system as a cooperative and collective effort. But after federal policies like redlining that undervalued property in Black neighborhoods and structural decisions continuously being made by governments and corporations to sustain Black food apartheid in Black communities, Black people continue to use the co-op business model to develop self-determining economies to meet their needs. We do it anyway. Contemporary efforts seeking food and land justice have been led by local Black organizers, and they're to study and organize anew and bring about a new wave of food co-op development in the 21st century. So we can take from South Los Angeles to Flint and Detroit, Michigan, to Dayton, Ohio, and many places in between. Dozens of Black communities right now are in various stages of co-op development to open new consumer-owned and sometimes some multi-stakeholder-owned retail grocery cooperatives. And funding is a problem for each of them. And the long legacy of wealth inequality, neighborhood disinvestment strategies, recent neighborhood investment strategies contributing to gentrification in historically Black neighborhoods, extractive traditional financing models, and the lack of will for our federal government to accept that Black and Indigenous people deserve reparations, all of this combines to make it even more extraordinarily difficult for Black communities to access the funding they need to build new grocery stores for themselves. And in spite of these barriers, Black folks are innovating and redesigning what food co-op development looks like for all communities developing food co-ops. They have done so by linking holistic and systems thinking to solving money problems. That looks like Black co-ops being in partnership with local hospitals because social determinants of health, like lack of access for healthy and safe food, are real. And a local hospital providing grant dollars to a local and community-owned grocery store makes sense. Economic and racial injustice are absolutely linked to inequitable food systems in our country. We know that after the murder of George Floyd and the rebellions that sparked across the nation, both traditional and more radical foundations increased their allocations to give to more cooperative enterprises. They understood in the throes of the pandemic as well what it meant for us to self-organize and to have to be self-determined in supporting one another. So Black food-led food co-ops are innovating how money circulates to these businesses to the benefit of the larger cooperative movement. And the National Black Food and Justice Alliance just finished up a market study project, which emerged from many conversations within Black-led co-op spaces, where participants discussed the needs for culturally relevant data that can aid Black-owned co-ops to obtain funding from a wider range of public and private sources. And they said that the current market research field is heavily reliant on data that diminishes the impact of Black spending and the demand for localized community-operated food options in our communities. In other words, Black communities aren't even represented among the many variables to be considered when thinking about the success of food co-ops. Their communities are unseen, and thus the funding apparatus is already stacked against them before they even try. So as Black cooperatives become larger in scale to serve thousands, and even for the smaller Black co-op businesses that aren't going to be grocery stores that exist, there's a financing gap. We know the extractive lending is not going to help these efforts. We know that they need pre-development free money, AKA grants, not loans, to make the decent footing in these efforts. And I'll close by just offering that in 2020, when I was executive director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative, I addressed a town hall audience about public banking and shared that if Philadelphia had a public bank, it could promote the cooperative business model and help build community wealth in our city. 2 years later, I think this hope still remains. We need better, fairer, more equitable solutions to capitalizing small businesses, including cooperatives. And I'm hopeful that the Philadelphia Public Bank will eventually become one of our solutions to these ongoing inequities. So many thanks.
Thank you, Jamila. What a great opening and really great history. Thank you for mentioning collective courage. That's the thing. We've got 90 minutes here, and I love when people mention books that we can go and learn more, because we all want to do more of a deep dive into this. So thank you for that resource and your comments. So welcome everybody who has recently joined us. I'm Vanessa Lowe, your host for this 90-minute session. Let me start by saying we have other sponsors. So the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition is sponsoring this session, but we also have other sponsors, including Philly Neighborhood Networks, Weaver's Way, help to get the word out, and of course, PACA, the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. All right, let's move on. So next we'll have Clark Arrington. Clark Arrington's work on capital formation issues for worker cooperatives has had a foundational influence on today's worker cooperatives. As a senior fellow at Seed Commons, he works to develop non-extractive equity and debt financing that center membership and member benefits. He's played a critical role in leveraging millions of dollars of new investment for social justice cooperatives. Clark's going to ground us in financing cooperatives and some of those challenges. Welcome, Clark.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jamila. I thought that was an excellent presentation and will be a very hard act to follow. I mean, I think we could stop the show right now and just discuss the many concerns, issues, and information you provided. It was extremely informative. My understanding is that I'm going to share information, my opinions about why a public bank would facilitate cooperative financing and why it makes sense for a public bank to finance cooperatives. And I think the 3 points I want to make, number one is that cooperatives basically further a public interest. And my understanding is that a public bank is designed to further a public interest. And the public interests that co-ops further are sort of your basic public interests for citizens. Let's start with housing. Housing co-ops make housing more accessible, more stable, more livable than other sources of housing. They make them more affordable, housing co-ops. They're also connected to community land trusts, which also provides more access to citizens and furthers the public interest in citizenship, stewardship of land and land resources. Credit unions, cooperative credit unions are cooperatives, and they provide access to credit to your average person at much more affordable, reasonable rates, and it provides a degree of control over your own financing, because members, depositors, owners of the credit union are the members that participate in the credit union. So again, furthering another public interest. Jobs. Worker-owned cooperatives are basically set up. Their number one priority is providing jobs, not providing profits, not providing income for passive investors, but providing income for the people that work in the cooperative, in the worker-owned business. Clearly a public interest, clearly one that the government would want to further and create as many worker-owned cooperatives that secure employment for citizens and provide a tax base for the city, for city government. Products. We've talked about Weaver's Way and other consumer co-ops, and they provide products they provide a higher quality product at a much more reasonable cost. Again, furthering a public interest. So for no other reason on the fact that cooperatives are totally aligned with public interests, that public banks should want to finance and create as many cooperatives as they possibly can. Now, the other, obvious reason is that as a bank, public banks are much more inclined to invest in people than in assets. Commercial banks invest in assets. That's how they make decisions as to whether or not to invest or not. It is determined by the quality and the value of the assets. Whereas a public bank should be investing in people, dealing with the quality and nature and activities of the people. And that's what co-ops are. They're people-oriented. They're people participatory units in capitalism, in organizational development. And then thirdly, and Jamila mentioned this, is that co-ops are a very attractive element for securing capital. And I can assure you that by promoting an interest in financing cooperatives, that you will facilitate capital formation for the public bank. That there are a lot of investors now, a lot of funding sources that are interested in cooperative economic development, they're interested in community economic development, and they're particularly attracted to cooperatives. And I say that as, three efforts that I'm involved in. One, Cooperative Fund of the Northeast. We have $60 million, and not a lot of money, but it's exclusively devoted toward cooperatives. We just fund projects in the Northeast. Seed Commons were also fairly well capitalized. And again, we only finance worker-owned businesses and cooperatives. And then most recently, project I was involved in Los Angeles, downtown Crenshaw Rising, which attempted to purchase a mall, the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall in downtown central LA. We raised $30 million to purchase that mall. And I know one of the elements that attracted investors was the fact that we committed to creating cooperative businesses and creating a cooperative structure that would own and operate and be tenants of the mall. And that was extremely meaningful to a lot of investors. And literally we raised $30 million. And then I'm a part now fourthly, I guess, of a group, it's called Obron Cooperative. And one of our big selling point to investors, it's a for-profit, worker-owned cooperative, is that we're a worker-owned cooperative. And there's a lot of, I won't say a lot, but there's significant, substantial, socially responsive investment funds that are looking to do socially responsive investments. And investing in a cooperative is almost inherently doing something that's socially responsive because of the nature of how cooperatives are structured and the nature of how cooperatives are operating. You also have the opportunity, because what cooperatives need is patient capital. They don't need the capital that has to service outside investors and provide profits to people that are looking to maximize profitability from their passive investments. And so a public bank would be able to provide funding such as no recourse loans, meaning the loan does not have to be repaid until the enterprise turns a profit. That's what Seed Commons does. We're very stable. We have not had any defaults. We have at least $60 million investment capital. We can invest as much as we possibly can. We have a demand for investments, or we have a demand on the capital, but not on investments. But our deal is basically, it's a non-extractive financing deal to cooperatives, and it provides that there's no default unless the enterprise generates a profit and fails to pay the loan repayment from the profit that it's generated. But if it doesn't make a profit, it doesn't have to pay the loan. And a public bank will be able to do that. We're able to do that because our lending, the return we provide to our investors is the same. It parallels, it lines up with our investments. And a public bank would be able to do the same thing. And you would be able to, with government public funds, to leverage public funds with private investments, even make even more comfortable, more accessible funding for cooperatives and other ventures, but certainly for cooperatives. Secondly, you could consider doing recoverable grants. And it's something I did with the African Development Fund, where we would make a grant, but it was recoverable. And so if the project, the cooperative, we funded cooperatives. That's what we did in Tanzania. I funded cooperatives in Tanzania, which is really cool because the cooperative economic development philosophy strategy of Tanzania under Julius Nyerere was Ujamaa, which was basically cooperative economic development. And so even in the 2000s, there was still significant cooperatives in operation and developing, and that we funded through the African Development Foundation, African Development Fund, I'm sorry. I also worked for the African Development Foundation, but it was African Development Fund, rather, but it was not about totally cooperative. But anyway, with a recoverable grant, once the business plan is put together, the grant is made based on the ability of the cooperative at some point generating surplus income. And that surplus income would be then contributed to, in my case in Tanzania, was contributed to a consulting firm that provided, that managed a fund for continued cooperative economic development. So the bank would have the ability to do that also, particularly with funds that they could leverage with public funds from socially responsive investors. And I'm sure you could, there are people like myself, Jamila, that can help you structure, that can help the bank structure those type of investments and even direct you to the type of investors that would be attracted to those types of investments. So I'm not gonna, I think those are really strong points. I don't need to really elaborate, but there's ample reason and justification for a public bank to be very, very interested in having the opportunity to invest and support cooperatives in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Everybody has to be reminded to unmute at least one time. So thank you, Clark, and thank you for those very specific examples of what a Philadelphia Public Bank can do to support cooperatives. And I'm gonna now go and search for that Crenshaw Mall, raising $30 million for a co-op mall. That sounds great. So that's definitely something I'm gonna follow up on. All right, let's move on to our next speaker, Alex Stewart. So Alex Stewart's family has been rooted in Philadelphia for 120 years. He seeks healing and peace that will come from economic and social liberation from exploitative systems. He's been involved with the cooperative economy for over a decade, including his current role with PACA as membership coordinator. He believes co-ops are valuable tools to enable communities to become thriving and self-determined environments. So Alex is going to give us the local landscape of cooperatives here. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, everyone. And it's a great pleasure to be here amongst great co-op leaders such as Jamila and Clark. And it's a pleasure to be able to stand on their shoulders. And as Jamila said, they were the executive director of PACA, and Clark has a long history of supporting the building out of the local ecosystem and just sharing his knowledge and experience. So I really appreciate being able to be here for that. I'm going to share some slides. That 1 second. Okay, I guess I didn't share my window.
While
And
he is sharing slides, reminder, please put your questions in the chat. We're going to have about at least 20 minutes, maybe even a half hour of a roundtable discussion. So we want your questions. Please put them in the chat. All right.
everyone can see the slides currently, right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. As Vanessa said, I am the membership coordinator of PACA. And just a tidbit, I joined PACA in May. And what lured me to join PACA this time around, and this time, is PACA is also experimenting with being cooperatively structured itself, and holding its membership in its decision making, and holding its staff in its decision making, and also its board of directors, and building out that ecosystem to then support the overall communities and members that we serve in our communities. And so I'd like to just jump into like, what is a cooperative? And a cooperative here we have is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. And I bolded united voluntarily because I have come to the cooperative ecosystem not from a business perspective, but from a community organizing lens. And those which you see when we are building out cooperatively on the grassroots level is that it is built in people choosing to put aside their differences and to see that they have a common goal and common obstacles to that goal, and they unite to overcome that. And as Jamila spoke on, this cooperative model, it exists, beyond some of the principles, the Rochdale principles that I'll speak of next, but it is rooted in the lifestyle of a lot of our indigenous cultures. And so I always want to brief space for that and to understand that we are standing on history when we are standing on the core aspect of human history when we talk about working cooperatively. And as I spoke of, we have here 7 core cooperative principles that a lot of our cooperative membership and ecosystem operate from, and that is voluntarily open membership, democratic member control, cooperation among cooperatives, autonomy and independence, member economic participation, concern for community, and education through trainings, and the availability of the information to make a educated decision. And just by voicing these principles, I always like to ask people to think about the values you hold, and how can you use those values to unite voluntarily with other people who you may not see eye to eye with, but where you are able to hold these similar values and expand on them collectively in your community and in your daily life. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about Philadelphia locally, as where I am. It's where, as Vanessa said, where I have a long history and the pleasure of serving the membership of through my role at PACA. And Philadelphia has is a beautiful place to do this work, as it is the birth of the cooperative history in the United States, with the Philadelphia Contribution Ship for insurance of houses lost by fire. That was the first cooperative in 1752, founded in Philadelphia in part by Ben Franklin. And then later on down the line, you see in 1787, the African Free Society, and that is building out cooperative's place in shaping the culture. And as I said, I come from the community organizing aspect of cooperatives, and so I always put this picture in the talks that I make about our cooperative ecosystem and cooperative history in Philadelphia. And if anyone wants to take a second to guess what this picture is, give you a hint, it's from 1985. And yeah, it is the move bombing. And I always put this picture in here because it reminds me of a quote from my mentor, Michael Rupert, which is that war is politics by other means, but politics is economics by other means. And so we see with the move bombing, there were people in our community cooperating together in their local community to be self-sufficient and to not rely on external institutions and forces to meet their common needs. And that is not always eye to eye with the current economic paradigm. And so, yes, cooperative businesses are growing. Institutional money is coming around to seeing it as a good investment to bring democracy to our workplaces. But that is on the history of a lot of pushback. And in Philadelphia, we get to stand on the shoulders of some of the most visceral and visual pushback and violent pushback from our government in terms of people trying to be self-sufficient as local as possible. And then I always like to say in 2011, we have PACA, and PACA is is a cooperative of cooperatives. So looking to build out that economic power that I talked about by bringing all of our cooperative members together to carry that similar weight. And I don't want to overload you here, but this is a great reading list that PACA uses in its early days and still today to really shine light on the history and the projects and experiments going around the country. We do have Collective Courage in here, I believe. We have also Farming While Black, Emergent Strategies, and many other great books that build on the collective history and the collective experiments that came before and have birthed a lot of the culture of the cooperative ecosystem and in the states and also out of the states internationally. Here's a map. It's a tad bit outdated, but I love it because it shows our members great smiles as well. But it is a map of the Philadelphia Cooperative. We are still roughly around the same number of members. And I always like to point out that this is not the full scope of all the cooperatives in Philadelphia. Our community is much bigger. These are just the members of PACA at the moment. But as you see, we are a diverse and a well spread out bunch and are doing the work where it is needed. Is not being done by traditional businesses and bringing democracy to the workplace in all parts of the city. And from this point, I'll talk about just some of the models, just so that we understand, the cooperative models if anyone is not familiar. So first we have here is consumer cooperative, and consumer cooperatives meet the needs of members who purchase consumer goods. They allow the members to really have a say in the quality, the pricing, availability, and also the ability to deliver goods to our community members who are not able to get them, to obtain them on their own. And this comes in the form of grocery cooperatives, or CSAs or buying clubs. And here you see we have our great members presented as Westchester Cooperative, South Philly Food Cooperative, Newark Natural Foods, Mariposa, Bethlehem Food Cooperative, Kenneth Community Grocer, and of course Weaver's Way and Kensington Community Food Co-op holding that sector down beautifully. We have these can also look like consumer cooperatives can also take the form of utilities such as internet, building out speed and security as the priority versus profit, web hosting, and energy and wind consumption. And so as PACA membership, we have the Energy Cooperative, as well as US ServerNet, and I'm missing one more that goes in there, I believe. There's another member that I think I'm missing. But yeah, they are holding down that space of utilities, and providing its members and its consumers the ability to really focus on the quality of that service versus extracting profit from providing that service. And as Clark said, we have Ardent Credit Union, which is a credit union member within PACA, and housing. We have Del Val Apartments, and we also have the Life Center Association, which are two housing cooperatives, and show you the various models that they, even in our housing co-op sector, that this can be achieved. Life Center Association is mostly, mostly single family homes or shared homes, and the Valley Green Apartment is an apartment complex. So displaying the various ways that housing can be provided in a co-op setting. And next we have producer co-ops, and in our membership, we have the Urban Creators, which is a collective group that looks to educate, energize, and empower and unite local people around producing artistry, producing music, and also producing food, and collectively organizing around land. And the idea of a producer co-op is to bring those, like I said, those producers together and build out that economic power into one entity, and share resources to build out access to the market and build out a competitive advantage that you otherwise would not have as the individual producer. At this time, PACA does not have any purchasing cooperatives, but we do have, once again, we stand on great history where Philadelphia has the privilege of having one of the oldest purchasing cooperatives, which is the Philadelphia Reserve Supply Company, established in 1930. And what a purchasing cooperative does is it allows the members, which are participant businesses usually, to increase their efficiency in purchasing supplies and providing services, gain access to some of the best practices, and share services such as IT, marketing, transportation, and so on to mitigate the liability you hold by doing those things that are not your essential and primary function. And we don't, like I said, we don't have any, but if you think of an Ace Hardware, that individual one you may see is owned by an individual business owner, but the Ace Hardware Corporation is owned by all of those business owners, and they have a big say in how they operate at that corporate level. Next, we have worker cooperatives, and you see all of our beautiful array of worker cooperatives we have in our local ecosystems, from daycares to doulas with Birth Brown, to Bonfire Media, to Colmenar, to Keystone Bike Shop, Home Care and Associates, A&A and Associates Bookkeeping, Even Violin and bow crafting. So worker cooperatives allow the workers to not only bring democracy to our workplace. I like to always think about it, we live in America. If someone doesn't, I apologize here, but we live in the United States. We pride ourselves on freedom. And then when we go to work, we kind of put that freedom to the side. We kind of put who we are to the side. And what I believe is worker cooperatives saying, that doesn't make sense. If I'm going to be free for 16 hours, then I should be free for 24 hours to be myself. And worker cooperatives allow workers to exercise that. They also allow workers to build wealth through profit sharing. That profit that they generate, the labor that they contribute, that builds out profit, is shared, and what is done with that profit is determined by the workers instead of an external administrative entity that is not of the working labor. It also allows workers to determine if they're going to have benefits in industries that are typically not ones that give benefits to workers. safe working conditions, because that is a cutting measure in typical businesses, and job security and worker development. Our economy is always changing, industry is always changing, and that should not mean that our workers are out of a job, that their families are not able to be supported by the labor that they can contribute. So ensuring that we are developing our workforce, and investing in ourselves. That profit that we generate is going back into our being, is very essential in a worker cooperative and what it brings to the table. And last, in terms of models, we have multi-stakeholder, and this sort of is what I illustrated in terms of PACA, in its entity, where we are taking not only taking into account the staff who works it, or the board of directors, or the membership that we serve, but we are taking all of those into account and to figure out how we best serve the communities that we serve overall. And we see the same thing with an interesting member, Project Learn School, which is taking not only the teachers who run the school, but the parents, and bringing them in to ensure that we are shaping and providing the best education possible to our kids by doing that and recognizing that they are multi-stakeholders in that institution. What happens in that school does not only affect the teachers or the administrative staff, but it affects the parents, and most importantly, it affects the children. And so when we move in that light, when we acknowledge all the people who hold weight and who are affected, we can come up with really interesting and creative solutions to our economic institutions and problems that they hold. And I'm sure everyone here is greatly happy with the Philadelphia school system, so I'm sure we don't really need that. But it shows you how we can bring creative solutions to these institutional problems we hold. And yeah, just a broad benefit. It can benefit the workers, it can benefit consumers, producers, investors, and like I said, bring in community to then find and combine some of those best practices. And as I close out, I always like to, ask questions. I just have the audience think about where they play a role, as I said, in carrying this economic power that we as working class people hold. What are the values of the local cooperative ecosystem that we are building? Which is really asking you, what are the values you hold that you are going to bring to this ecosystem? In traditional work, when we are working as many hours as we can to mostly survive, we're not given the time to really ask ourselves what values we hold. But in a cooperative economy that we are building, we need to know that, and we need to be able to test those in this world. And so I ask you, what are the cooperative values you are holding? And also, what are you already doing that is cooperative? Some of us in this tough economic times are taking care of other people and are serving our community in different ways, and giving more or receiving from our community as we need. And so that is cooperation. That is the crux, as I said before, that is the lifestyle, not maybe the business aspect of cooperative. That is the lifestyle choice, the voluntary choice. Yeah, I just messed that up. That is that we are making. And so I would like us to think about those, like how are we doing that in our daily lives, and what obstacles do you face to building a cooperative based life and community? What obstacles are you facing that that don't allow you to care for your community in certain ways, or uphold those values that you say you have, to be more cooperative, because that is a great place to start. As I said, I come from the community organizing realm of cooperatives, and I did so by understanding my economic situation, by being blessed to do that, and understanding that why my neighborhood was a high drug, high violence area was an economic decision before it was a political decision. And really being able to understand why my family for generations had housing insecurity or economic in nature, and and not really political or financial in nature. And so I leave you with that. And this last slide here is resources. I am a member and I am a staff member of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance, and we are looking to build out our ecosystem, to build out people already in motion and people who are thinking about getting in motion. And we have various ways to do that. And we have study circles, which this year we announced 2 different tracks, which is the study track, which works with group exploring community ownership and cooperative enterprises through study over 6 months. And then we have the build track, which works with groups from previous study circle cohorts who are interested in continuing to develop their idea with support from PACA staff through collaboratively designed TA, designed specifically for the sector that they are looking to work through. As Clark talked about, we are a peer lender of C Commons, which is a national network of locally rooted non-extractive loan funds that aims to bring power of big finance under community control. And we do policy and advocacy work, which as our co-op members are forging their way through these economic sectors, a lot of times an obstacle is political lack of education or political redlining, because cooperatives are something that our politicians and institutional staff are not really very educated on. And so building out those pathways to get a voice in politics and a voice in our legislative agenda, PACA supports that. And for cooperatives in motion and already doing a lot of this work, we offer technical assistance. A lot of times the running of the business is one aspect of cooperatives, and then it is trying to figure out, your members change, your values change, how to figure all of that out, how to come together democratically and continue to support each other and be in community. And as well as some of the just technical redundancies that are across the board, such as bookkeeping and such as just taking startup steps and other trainings that may come across as a need in your time of operating your cooperative. PACA provides those. And so, yeah, that is it for me. I thank you all for being here and giving me this time to talk about what we're doing at PACA and the history that we are a part of.
Thank you so much, Alex. We're going to move on. You can learn more about PACA by going to philadelphia.coop. Thank you, Alex. Really great information. We want to leave at least 20 minutes for our discussion, so let's move on to John Rosser. John Rosser has been the general manager of Weaver's Way Cooperative Association since 2015. He's committed to engaging in commerce in a way that is more fair, equitable, and ultimately more sustainable, and to reestablishing local control over the Philadelphia region's economy. He's worked to expand the co-op's reach and impact, including into the proposed site in Germantown, which I'm very excited about. Let's learn more about Weaver's Way from John. John, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. It is a pleasure to be here, especially after listening to the last 3 presenters. Really awesome stuff, and it's my privilege to be with them. I believe I've got a slideshow to show. Oh, there we go. Hopefully you can all see that. So first of all, let me just say that Weaver's Way is very excited by the prospects of a Philadelphia public bank. Through our size and through our history, we have been able to access capital in a way that other cooperatives have struggled to do. But even our success has been very, very limited and pales in comparison to what we are seeing from our for-profit competitors whose expansion into our marketplace is driven by profit and is driven by Wall Street private equity. And so, the idea of being able to to have a Philadelphia Public Bank as a resource for potential future capital is just, it makes us giddy. Briefly, a little bit about Weaver's Way. So we are a consumer-owned cooperative. Alex did a fine lesson in the different kinds of co-ops, and we're a consumer cooperative. We were established in the Mount Airy section of Northwest Philadelphia in 1973 as a produce buying club. We are organized as both a Pennsylvania nonprofit corporation and a Pennsylvania cooperative corporation. We currently have 11,000 plus member households representing over 25,000 individuals. Our stores are open to the public, and approximately 79% of our shoppers are member owners of the co-op, the rest being non-members. In Mount Airy, we operate 3 stores. Our main store at the corner of Carpenter and Green, our across the way store, and our mercantile store. In Chestnut Hill, which opened in 2010, we operate 2 stores, our main store and our next door store. Our Ambler store opened in 2017. And as Vanessa mentioned, we are going to be opening up a store in Germantown. Our anticipated opening date is later this year. In addition to our retail operations, we operate 2 farms, one at Aubrey Arboretum and one at Saul High School for Agriculture. We have our own community newspaper, which is published 10 times a year. And we have a warehouse distribution center on Erie Avenue in Juniata. Our annual revenue is approximately $38 million. We have 250 employees. As it said in my bio, one of the principal missions of Weaver's Way is to support the local food systems, the Philadelphia Food Shed, and we do support in a way that I dare say nobody else can support on a scale that we've been able to achieve so far. We have over 300 local vendors, which we define as 150 miles from City Hall. So that is, farmers in Lancaster County and coffee roasters in Kensington and ice cream makers and everything else you can imagine. And I can say that in terms of the public bank as an asset, so many of those 300 food growers and food producers that we deal with are very small businesses and really struggle with being able to access capital. And so the idea of a public bank to support them so that we can in turn support them by purchasing their product and selling it to our members, I think that that's a huge opportunity. One thing that I think everyone should know is that the grocery landscape in Philadelphia is changing pretty dramatically. What has historically been dominated by those regional chains and franchises that we're all familiar with, including ShopRite, which, as I saw, there was some conversations in the chat. ShopRite is an example of a different kind of cooperative. But in the last 10 years, out-of-towners have been carving up the Philadelphia grocery marketplace. You're familiar with Heirloom and Giant. Those are brand names of the Ahold Delhaize giant corporation, $31 billion net market capitalization. The Fresh Market, Sprouts. I don't need to go through the list. My point really is that some of these businesses do a fine job at what they do. Some do not so fine of a job at what they do, but they are all expanding by Wall Street venture capital. That's what drives their expansion. And one of our goals is to try and stake out in the Philadelphia marketplace a piece that is cooperatively owned. So this is what we're up against. Next slide, if you please. So our growth and our ability to leverage additional capital has been, again, a product of the fact that Weaver's Way has a long history and a well-established membership. And often that is not the case with many cooperatives. They're starting out, they're relatively small, and so they don't have the benefits that we have. Our member loans were the starting point of our expansion. And in 2009, the member loan campaign netted $900,000. We were able to take that $900,000 to banks and leverage additional money as a result. Same thing in Ambler in 2016, a year before our Ambler store opened, a $1.5 million member loan campaign. And then our most recent member loan campaign, which ended at the end of last year, we raised $2.2 million for the Germantown expansion, which I'll talk about next. That's our future Germantown store. If you're familiar with Germantown, what you're looking at is at the corner of Chelton Avenue, which is in the foreground of the picture. And then that side street on the right-hand side is Morris Street. And the cars parked along Morris give you an idea of the scale of the building. We're not talking about a huge building here, but it should wind up being about 6,000 square feet of retail space, which would be a good size for a neighborhood grocery store. This building that you're looking at was back in the day an Acme market, back when Acme operated much smaller community size markets. So we are bringing this store back to life. The Acme closed in 1972. The building had several iterations after that, but 1972 is the last year commerce was engaged out of this building. And so we are bringing this back to life. So yeah, I'll just talk about the sources of financing for we estimate this to be a $7.2 million project. I mentioned the $2.2 million member loan campaign. We will also get approximately $200,000 in new member equity. That's our estimates for new members that will join Weaver's Way as we expand to Germantown, or existing members who increase their equity as a way of supporting the Germantown endeavor. We have been very, very fortunate to receive a variety of different grants totaling $1.75 million. Because of where the building is located, it qualifies for new market tax credits, which the equivalent of about $900,000. And then we have been able to secure bank financing through PIDC, Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, and the Reinvestment Fund. These are loans. It is advantageous financing, and we are very fortunate that we were able to secure this financing, but it was primarily based on our ability to raise our own capital through our membership. I think that might be my last slide. If you have any questions, there's my email. I'm easy to find, and I welcome questions and comments. Reach out anytime. I'll leave it there, Vanessa. Thank you for giving me some time to talk.
Need to take my mute off. Thank you, John. That was really great. I think a lot of people who are on this session are probably members of Weaver's Way. So we are supportive of it. And I am very much looking forward to the Germantown shop. All right, we definitely, before we leave at 8:30, we want to get some questions from the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter. Give us a question to start with.
Thanks, Vanessa. The Financial Authority and the Public Bank wants to be the financial partner for the cooperative movement. And we've had great information about the deep history in Philadelphia and within the Black community of a cooperative movement and the health of where we are now. What does the panel feel is the future? And how in that future can the Financial Authority and Public Bank be most helpful to the cooperative movement?
Jamila, do you want to go first on that one? I see you sitting up.
Oh, sure. As I look at the businesses and the efforts that I'm working with, early stage pre-development support. I think Barbara Clark was talking about different strategies for transitioning loans into being forgiven, other kinds of grants, ways in which to really invest in giving people a chance, I think is a lot of what our ecosystem is going to need if we're aiming to support communities who have traditionally been economically exploited and extracted from. The investment has to be patient, and hopefully repairable. Like it's theirs, they deserve it. So to the degree that the public bank is established and set up in a way that it can support the emergence and be patient with the needs of these kinds of cooperative businesses, I think we have a better chance of seeing these kinds of businesses grow, expand, and thrive in our ecosystem.
Thanks. Anybody else? I think Clark said some of the similar things. Clark, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I think she covered it.
Great.
Patience.
Yeah,
Patient
creative.
capital. Patient
Yeah.
capital. It's definitely one of the
Patient
key.
capital and creative capital.
yeah, the public bank is interested in patient capital. To what extent is the cooperative model, particularly in need of patience? Is there a longer timeline to get things established for a cooperative because it's a cooperative? Are there differences between the different kinds of cooperative, consumer, producer, worker cooperatives? Do they face different financial obstacles one from the other?
Yes, all of the above. You know, and it obviously it depends on whether or not you're talking about a startup. All startups are, you know, need patient capital. They're not generating surpluses the minute they open the door. Or if it's a mature business, you know, and then the question is assets for some banks. You know, do they have the assets to secure the loan? Otherwise, it needs to be patient. And then it's just, you know, sort of a just, fair, you know, economically reasonable approach to making capital available that provides a public service, that furthers a public interest, and is not motivated by increased profits and surplus on surplus capital. I mean, that's just not the model that cooperatives want to foster, they want to support. And I'm not saying it's anti-capitalist or anything, but I'm simply saying it's a way of doing business without having to exploit workers, the earth, consumers, etc. It's being reasonable about how you do business. And so the cost of capital should also be reasonable.
Got it. Thank you. I want to answer a few questions that I saw come through the chat. One was the slides. So yes, the slides will be available on the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition's website when we load up the video. So this video, like the last one, will be loaded up. So you can go there and get the slides and get the other one. Let me turn it back to Peter. We definitely want to get as many audience questions as possible. Peter, give us another one.
One of the things that we really haven't talked about tonight is the conversion of businesses that are privately owned into cooperative ownership. Could you speak about what those opportunities are? So frequently, businesses that have been successful fail or they just go under because there's no exit strategy that's viable. How about conversion of cooperatives as a way of preserving existing businesses? Clark?
I can answer that.
Oh, it's Alex.
Yeah, early in my time at PACA, we were in the process of supporting like a few different cafes looking to be worker cooperatives. And I think patient financing could have played a great role in that, where the workers were not ready or needed education in the process of taking on the financial fiduciary duties that came with running the business, and were pros and experts at doing the day-to-day duties that generated profits and generated income. But there was no loan structure. There was no way to really meet that middleman where the former owner selling the business would like to be out, and the new owners had to have an educational period in order to be able to steward that business properly. And we find that if there is a patient capital, if there is an alternative to, hey, we'll give you this money, but we want 8% interest, starting tomorrow, that is a factor. And so if we have an alternative to that, and we would be able to facilitate some of these developments more often. But we see it every day. We see it with, I think an interesting thing that Pocket staff is talking about is working with more unions. As unions are getting their employees to strike, there's been a mass exodus of teachers and nurses. They want to take their talent somewhere. The cooperative ecosystem can be a place for that if we're able to finance that without exploitative loan practices.
Is there an opportunity for an interim equity position? Someone who could hold an equity position while a co-op gets its feet under it?
I think what you're talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead, Clark.
Sure, no, that's just a matter of structuring the financing. A lot of times preferred shares are used so that the interim financier investor takes preferred shares, takes a preference on dividends and security interest in the project, but doesn't necessarily have a controlling interest. And that becomes very, very helpful. I also want to share with you company I work with now. I'm general counsel for a group called Obron Cooperative LCA. And we buy companies and convert them to worker ownership. So we have now, we're like about $50 million in assets, and we've got about 500 employees. And what we use a lot, we use almost exclusively, is a section called 1042 of the IRS code, which allows for a rollover of the capital gains received from the sale of the company to the worker co-op. So a seller will sell their company to us. They put the proceeds in replacement shares, and if those replacement shares are sold, through the seller's estate, they don't pay any capital gains. So if you sold your company to Obron, put the shares, the proceeds in Apple, and Apple, appreciated by 100%, you wouldn't pay any gain on that 100% capital gain. It would pay us free in your estate. And a lot of investors, they don't have to put it all, they have to put at least 30%, find that very attractive as a tax advantage in converting the company from single ownership or traditional ownership to worker ownership.
You said that's 1042, sir?
It's section 1042 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Because we have, I'm how you doing? My name is Roger Meadows. I'm a big fan of public banks. I've been studying them since 2010. I'm not in your city. I'm not even in your state, but we have something like that out here that does that for small businesses out here on Long Island, where people are retiring with their small businesses or whatever, and their kids don't want it. So we have like a not company, but a 501c3, it's an organization that helps to do that transitioning process so that they can retire and they could transfer ownership to their workers. So, I just found that. I remember also Professor Richard Wolff calling that a right of first refusal law as well, where they have that in England where they can, what Peter was talking about, transferring ownership to your company, to the workers before the owner decides if he decides that he wants to go, before he goes public, before he what's the other one, before he outsources, before all of these other things merge or whatever the case is, that their workers have the first option to at least give them a chance to purchase the company and convert into a cooperative. So.
All right, thanks. So Seed Common, I understand that that's sort of their expertise. I know about New Era Windows, I believe, that got a lot of publicity in Boston. It was a owner who was ready to retire and kind of didn't have kids who wanted to take it over. And he literally, the way I read the story is he just shut the doors. And the predominance of his workers who were making the windows were people of color. And they kind of just started protesting, sitting outside waiting for something to happen. And then got connected with Seed Commons, who helped train them and help them understand about worker ownership, and then lent them money in order to help buy the company from the new owner. So yeah, that was really an interesting story. So follow up with Seed Commons. You can look them up. All right, other questions?
Let me just say, it's in
Yep.
Chicago, not Boston.
Okay, got it.
And
Seed
the owner
Commons.
was just a corrupt, I don't know, exploitive guy. And you might also, and the Seed Commons is the mothership.
Mhm.
In New York, we have what is called the Working World, which
Right.
is our peer. And you might want to connect with the Working World to help you with the conversions, to finance it. I mean, that would be your contact. And the money comes from the mothership.
Okay, the working world. It's here in New York.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
cool.
It's and they do a lot of stuff in Brooklyn, Long Island, the Bronx. I mean, they're
Okay.
All right, thank you for those resources. So, and we're bothering Clark a lot, but I did want to get this question because I was interested in how you've worked on essentially the documentation for cooperatives. And so our public bank is kind of going to be like a cooperative, right? And so my question is, what documents and covenants should the Public Financing Authority and eventually the public bank, should the board be considering in order to ensure that Philadelphia citizens who are kind of going to be these co-op members, that their benefits are sort of primary, that their thoughts, their desires. I think the legislation is really good at getting, it says that we require, people who've worked in community organizing, people who've worked in cooperatives, people who've worked in affordable housing and things like that. But this is a big city. So what ideas do we have to really get those the citizens of Philadelphia voices prioritized?
well, at the end of the day, I'll just be very brief, but the articles of incorporation, the charter for the bank needs to incorporate cooperative principles and a focus on cooperativeness. Our group out in LA, basically what we said was in the deed in which we would secure in purchasing the mall, we would require all lessees to be cooperatives or be cooperatively organized in order to lease land from this particular mall. And we'd incorporate that into the deed so that it was enshrined. It was also in the articles of incorporation. But that's where you want to start, in the purposes of the bank. And a statement that says, as clearly as you possibly want to make it, and as strong as you want to make it, what the purposes of the bank are in relationship to supporting, funding cooperatives and cooperative economic development.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we want the financial authority and the public bank to be very clear about the cooperative principles that we embrace. One of the advantages that the bank will have over most of the cooperatives, especially new startup cooperatives, is that the bank will have a lot of money, and a lot of the people who are starting up cooperatives don't. So the question that I would ask is, what ways can credit enhancement and other kinds of support from the public bank be helpful to some of the cooperative movements and cooperative organizations that are in the less wealthy parts of the city?
I'm passing. John and
It's like,
Jamil.
I'm done.
John, Alex, jump on that.
I do not feel remotely qualified to answer that question.
What do you need? What does Weaver's Way need in regard to finance?
Well, I think that there's again, I mean, I think that our members can provide the seed money for our growth. And I can't speak for our board of directors. I'm not on our board of directors, but I believe our board of directors is very much representative of our members who are it's a very mission-driven organization, and they want to grow the cooperative economy. And the way that we've been able to grow is very incremental. We'll all be long and dead before we can achieve the kind of scale that we would like to achieve, and that potentially a public bank can help us achieve. And when I say us, I don't mean Weaver's Way specifically. I mean the cooperative movement.
Right.
And I think that thinking about my fellow consumer grocery co-ops in Philadelphia, they're all smaller one-store operations doing really awesome work in their communities, but they struggle first and foremost with capital. That's the thing that they need more than anything else.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Jamila. Go ahead.
I was just going to offer, I think, oftentimes and at least when I was at PACA, what we would see in the ecosystem is the startups are small. They're not, a lot of times they are not going to be large businesses. We hope that they will emerge, right? And, there are other kinds of organizing efforts that are trying to imagine, how do we grow to scale? How do we get manufacturing and production and all these kinds of things? In the meantime, we have these small businesses. And when we think about credit, I'm going to always say that pre-development money. And then when those stores and those businesses get ready for credit, it has to be accessible at like an accessible limit, right? So a lot of times the debt stack becomes too much of a burden for these businesses to have to take on. So thinking about how to be sure that we're supporting these enterprises and being able to diversify their capital stacks and have different ways of moving and receiving and getting money. But it has to be fair to them, and it has to meet them where they're at. And sometimes that means small money. It might be $2,500, not $250,000, right? So will the public bank be able to meet these small, like micro small business kinds of needs for a lot of these emerging kinds of businesses?
Thank you. We have to wind down now, but I just want to add a comment to that. So one of the things that's getting popular now for particularly Black businesses is revenue-based financing. And so a lot of people know about venture capital financing, very extractive, sort of who's going to buy you out? They're going to buy your company. And it's like the revenue-based financing is really saying, you don't have to sell your company. We're going to work with you to figure out what is an appropriate time for you to grow your business. And we're going to take a piece of the revenue as you're growing to then, pay the investors and keep them engaged, that kind of thing. So revenue-based financing, I would love to have a whole different conversation on that. But I think it's a positive new model out there for financing, particularly small businesses that are not trying to be, international or even sort of, countrywide. All right, it is 8:31, so we are at time. Thank you all so much for our fantastic speakers, for all the folks from the Public Banking Coalition and the other co-sponsors who pulled this together. And we look forward to seeing you on our next opportunity when we'll get together, which is February 28th. We will move back to Financing Philadelphia's Future. It was mentioned that Helen Gim will be our guest. We have put out the invitation to all of the mayoral candidates, and she's the first one who responded with an actual date. So join us for that episode of Financing Philadelphia's Future. With that, again, we will load this up on the public banking website, including the slides. Thank you all for coming, and have a great evening.